Welcome to the deep dive. We've pulled together quite a fascinating stack of sources today, actually, all wrestling with a topic that's, well, it's captured human imagination forever, aging. And, the quest to push the limits of human lifespan.
Right.
You've got articles diving into some really cutting-edge lab science alongside pieces exploring the massive societal questions that living longer might bring.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. And right here at the start, there's a story that kind of highlights the state of play. This anti-aging advocate, Brian Johnson.
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
He announced he stopped taking rapamycin, which, is a pretty popular drug in longevity circles.
I was, yeah.
Because he believes it actually sped up his biological aging.
Yeah.
Based on his own data.
Wow. That's a big claim.
Yeah.
Especially from him.
It's pretty arresting, isn't it, from someone so publicly dedicated to turning back the clock?
It truly is. And it really puts a spotlight on the complex, sometimes, unpredictable reality of these interventions. That personal story is actually a perfect starting point for this deep dive. Yeah.
We're going to use these sources you've gathered to explore the state of anti-aging efforts, what the science is uncovering, the promising new frontiers, but also the significant uncertainties, the potential downsides, and, frankly, the profound implications these possibilities hold.
Right. Not just for our own health, but for how the world works.
Exactly. For the very structure of society.
So our goal here is to guide you through this material, pull out the most important insights, help you see the connections, maybe some surprising ones, so you can feel genuinely well-informed on this incredibly fast-moving topic. Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so the desire for a longer life, it's ancient. You see it everywhere. Myths, legends, fountains of youth, elixirs.
Always been there.
But modern science has really shifted the focus. For a long time, the big win was increasing average lifespan.
Which we've done incredibly well through public health, medicine.
Exactly. Better healthcare, sanitation, nutrition. Huge gains. But your sources show the scientific push now is increasingly about maximum lifespan. Yeah, trying to break past that ceiling, that sort of, 120, 125-year barrier.
Right. Can we actually push that number?
And scientists are exploring, a lot of different paths to potentially do that. One major area involves pharmaceutical compounds and supplements, basically. Stuff you might take hoping to slow down or even reverse aging at the cellular level.
Which brings us straight back to Brian Johnson and rapamycin.
Perfect example.
He added it to his pretty intense regimen, inspired by studies suggesting it could extend lifespan in animals.
Right. Various animal models showed promise.
Now, rapamycin, its original job was as an immunosuppressant, right?
Yeah.
For organ transplant patients.
Exactly. To prevent rejection, it gained traction in anti-aging because it targets this pathway called mTOR.
mTOR.
Okay. Yeah, it's crucial in regulating cell growth, metabolism, survival, and it's strongly implicated in the aging process itself.
So the thinking was, target mTOR, maybe slow aging, but his experience, not so great after 5 years.
No, far from it, according to the source. He reported some significant negative side effects. Painful mouth ulcers, wounds healing really slowly, increases in cholesterol and blood glucose levels that were concerning.
Okay.
And even his resting heart rate went up. But what seemed to really seal the deal for him stopping was learning about a Yale study, also mentioned in the sources, which indicated that, in some contexts anyway, rapamycin might actually accelerate biological aging.
Accelerate how?
By changing epigenetic markers. Those chemical tags on DNA that control which genes are on or off. The study suggested rapamycin might mess those up in a way that looks like faster aging.
Wow. That's quite a twist. That's a supposed anti-aging drug, maybe doing the opposite.
It really underscores the point Johnson himself made, viewing his whole project as experimental. A reset, he called it, when something isn't working.
Yeah, he acknowledged the irony, but stressed that this kind of exploration has risks. Sharing failures is part of it.
Absolutely. It just highlights how much we're still learning, even when repurposing drugs we thought we knew reasonably well.
Okay, so that's one example. What about other compounds getting attention? You mentioned NAD boosters earlier.
Right, NAD boosters, big buzz around those two. NAD stands for nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide.
Catchy.
Huh. Yeah, but it's vital. It's a cofactor, meaning it helps enzymes work. Involved in, over 500 reactions in the body, crucial for everything from making energy in our cells to repairing DNA, signaling, you name it.
And it's well established that NAD levels dropped quite a bit as we age. That's considered a hallmark of aging, right?
Definitely. A significant decline. So the logic, the idea is pretty straightforward. boosts those NAD+ levels back up.
And maybe counteract age-related decline, maybe even reverse some things.
That's the hope. And again, animal studies, especially in mice, have shown some really impressive results.
What kind of results?
Improvements in cognitive function, sensory function, metabolic health, protection against heart and kidney problems, even reports of improved fertility in older mice.
Okay, that sounds promising.
It does.
Then-
And here's where the reality check from the sources comes in hard.
The
The big but. While these NAD boosters, things like nicotinamide riboside, are widely sold as supplements, their anti-aging benefits in humans are largely unproven.
Really, despite the hype.
Despite the hype, part of the challenge is regulatory. Aging isn't officially classified as a disease by agencies like the FDA.
Right, so you can't easily run a trial for a drug that treats aging itself.
Exactly. It makes testing lifespan extension directly really difficult. And as we see time and time again, what works in lab mice doesn't always translate to humans.
Different biology, different lifestyles.
Totally. We're vastly more complex, genetically diverse, exposed to different things. It's a huge leap. And furthermore, the sources raise some pretty important safety concerns that maybe don't get talked about enough.
Oh, like what?
Well, some studies have linked repeated intake of NAD boosters to increases in total cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, the bad kind.
Okay. Not ideal.
And maybe even more concerning, some research suggests a link between increased levels of NAMPT. Yeah, it's a key enzyme the body uses to make NAD plus SEMA. Higher levels of NAMPT have been associated in some studies with an increased risk of glioblastoma.
Glioblastoma. That's a very serious brain tumor.
Extremely serious, aggressive, often fatal. NAPT seems to potentially fuel tumor growth in those cases, so the sources are really clear. We desperately need more robust, long-term human studies on both safety and efficacy before anyone should be taking these widely for anti-aging.
That's a really strong caution,
Yep.
especially since you can just buy them.
Exactly. Buyer beware, essentially.
Okay, so NAD boosters, promising in theory, tricky in practice.
Mm.
What about senolytics? That's another term you hear.
Senolytics, yes. The name gives it away. Seno for senescent or old cells, and lytics meaning to destroy or clear.
So clearing out old cells.
That's the idea. These are cells that have become damaged, stop dividing, but they don't die off like they should. They sort of hang around.
Zombie cells.
Kind of. And worse, they secrete inflammatory molecules and other gunk that damages surrounding tissues. This contributes to a lot of age-related diseases.
So the thinking is, get rid of them. Maybe you reduce disease and extend healthy life.
Precisely. And the preclinical data, again mostly in animals, looks quite promising. Clearing senescent cells seems to improve function in various organs and suppress age-related mortality in mice.
Any specific examples being studied?
Yeah, the sources mention a few. Quercetin, for instance. It's a flavonoid, one of those beneficial compounds you find in fruits and vegetables.
Right.
It's shown promise in animal models for reducing inflammation and having antifibrotic effects, meaning it might help prevent scar tissue buildup.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of interest in combining dasatinib, which is actually a cancer drug,
Oh, interesting.
with quercetin. This combo showed promise in clearing senescent cells and improving lung function in mouse models of lung fibrosis. And it also worked well, killing certain types of damaged human cells in vitro, in a lab dish.
Okay, so specific combinations are being looked at.
Definitely. And the sources also list a whole bunch of other natural compounds and phytochemicals being studied.
Like what else?
Things like resveratrol from grapes, epitectin from cocoa, curcumin from turmeric, urolithin A, that's made by gut bacteria from pomegranate compounds,
Yeah.
capsaicin from chili peppers, aged garlic extract, phytacin from strawberries, butene, selenium. It's a long list.
Wow. A lot of natural stuff.
Yeah, and they report promising results across different animal models, worms, flies, mice, rats. They're linked to mechanisms thought to be important in aging, antioxidant effects, anti-inflammation, tweaking pathways like IGF-1 or mTOR, activating mitophagy.
Autophagy. That's cleaning up damaged mitochondria, the cell's power plants.
Exactly, cleaning out the old batteries, basically.
So lots of promising animal data across the board for these supplements and compounds, too.
Yes.
DOT.
Always a but.
Always a but in this field right now. The sources really emphasize this. There is limited to no conclusive evidence that these things actually extend lifespan or provide robust anti-aging benefits in humans.
So the same story as NAD boosters, really. Pretty much. Resveratrol trials in humans are ongoing, but haven't proven lifespan extension. Maybe some hints of improvement in health markers, like blood sugar. Urolithin A had a small first human trial showing some encouraging signs for mitochondrial health, but again, tiny scale, needs way more research.
What about something common like aspirin? Wasn't that looked at?
It was. But despite being studied extensively, large analyses haven't shown it prevents cognitive decline in older adults, and it definitely carries risks like bleeding.
Right.
And one source from Radboud University Medical Center explicitly warns that medications targeting aging could have serious long-term health risks. They state very clearly that extensive long-term safety studies are absolutely essential before these could ever be considered safe for widespread anti-aging use.
Okay, so summing up this first part on pills and supplements, it sounds like there's a ton of activity, fascinating possibilities in the lab.
Absolutely. Mind-boggling possibilities in simpler organisms or cells.
But translating that safely and effectively into proven benefits for human lifespan extension, that's proving to be a massive hurdle.
Monumental. You've got complex biology, regulatory challenges, and as Brian Johnson's experience shows, sometimes unexpected negative effects.
It really highlights how early we still are in this journey, despite all the headlines and what you see on supplement shelves.
Very early days, in human terms.
Okay, so if tweaking our chemistry with pills has hit these kinds of challenges, what about going deeper? What about trying to, like, rewind the clock at the cellular level itself?
Ah, now you're getting into the really cutting-edge stuff. This is where one of your sources, the PMC paper, brings in the information theory of aging.
Information theory.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the gist?
The core idea is that aging isn't just simple wear and tear. It's fundamentally a loss of epigenetic information.
Epigenetic.
Hmm.
Those tags on the DNA we mentioned.
Exactly. Think of your DNA like the computer hardware. The epigenome is the software, the instructions telling each cell what genes to use and when. Telling a liver cell to act like a liver cell, a skin cell like a skin cell.
Got it.
Over time, the software gets corrupted, scrambled, cells lose their youthful instructions, start malfunctioning. That's aging, according to this theory.
Okay, a loss of information.
But here's the exciting part. The theory suggests this loss might be reversible. The information might still be there, just inaccessible. We might be able to restore it.
Restore the software.
Potentially. And previous groundbreaking work showed this was possible using genetic tools.
Wow.
Researchers used a specific set of genes, the Yamanaka factors, often just the OSK genes, to genetically reprogram cells in living mammals. And they found it could restore youthful patterns of gene activity and function in cells and tissues.
Without messing up the cell's identity.
Crucially, yes, without erasing their identity. A liver cell stayed a liver cell, just a younger acting one. That was huge.
Okay, that is huge. But genetic reprogramming in humans, that sounds complicated, maybe risky.
It does, which leads to the really interesting part of this new research in the PMC source. They're trying to achieve the same kind of age reversal chemically, using small molecules, basically drugs, instead of direct genetic engineering.
Ah, okay. Chemically rewinding the clock. How do they even look for molecules that could do that?
With some really clever high-throughput screening methods, ways to test thousands of molecules quickly. They use tools like transcriptomic aging clocks.
Measuring gene activity patterns to estimate age.
Exactly. And also this sophisticated real-time assay called NCC nucleocytoplasmic compartmentalization.
NCC. What's that measuring?
It detects a known problem in old and senescent cells. The barrier between the cell's nucleus, where the DNA is, and the surrounding hematoplasm breaks down. Things leak across that shouldn't. NCC measures the integrity of that barrier.
Okay, so they screened chemicals looking for ones that fix those age-related problems. What do they find?
Pretty remarkable results, actually. They identified 6 specific chemical cocktails.
Cocktails, like mixtures of chemicals.
Oh, yes, combinations of molecules. And these cocktails, in less than a week of treatment...
Less than a week?
Yeah, less than a week, in human cells grown in the lab, they were able to restore a youthful gene expression profile. Basically, they reversed the cell's transcriptomic age.
Wow.
And they also showed these cocktails fixed that broken NCC barrier in senescent cells, reversing a key hallmark of aging right there.
That sounds incredible. Did the cells stay as, say, skin cells? Or did they change?
That was the crucial check. Their genetic analysis confirmed the cells kept their original identity. Skin cells stayed skin cells. And importantly, they didn't show signs of becoming cancerous or reverting all the way back to pluripotent stem cells, which is a risk with some reprogramming methods.
So the cells got younger, but remembered what they were supposed to be.
It seems so. It suggests there might be some kind of built-in biological safeguard that prevents cells from completely losing their identity during this chemical rejuvenation.
The potential here feels enormous. Chemically reversing aging in human cells, restoring function without changing the cell type.
Exactly. The source talks about potential therapies for specific age-related conditions, especially things linked to the cell types they studied, or where that NCC barrier breakdown is a known issue.
Like what?
They specifically mention improving nervous system health, maybe tackling neurodegenerative diseases like ALS or FTD.
Lou Gehrig's disease and frontotemporal dementia.
Right, because that nuclear cytoplasmic barrier is known to be faulty in those conditions. Restoring it chemically could be a therapeutic angle.
Okay, this sounds almost sci-fi. What are the caveats? There have to be caveats.
Oh, absolutely. Huge caveats. The source is very careful to emphasize this. The absolute next step is rigorous safety testing.
In animals first.
Definitely. In mammalian animal models, before even thinking about human trials, remember, the older genetic reprogramming methods using all four Yamanaka factors, OSKM,
Yeah.
they turned out to be toxic in mice, sometimes cause tumors.
Right, so we need to know if these chemical cocktails have similar risks.
Exactly. Do they work through different, safer pathways? We just don't know yet. Much more research is needed to figure out the exact mechanisms and the key biological switches involved. Safety is paramount. And just briefly, the sources also mention other advanced approaches bubbling up in labs.
What else is on the horizon?
Things like more refined genetic and epigenetic editing, using stem cells for repair, nanomedicine for targeted delivery, tissue engineering to build replacement parts, even harnessing beneficial molecules in our blood, maybe from young blood, or molecules produced during exercise, and more personalized medicine tailored to your specific age and profile.
So a lot of different angles being explored beyond pills and chemicals.
Yeah, these are generally further out, but they're all part of this larger puzzle of how we might truly achieve rejuvenation, not just slow aging down.
Okay, so the takeaway from this part seems to be this chemical reprogramming work is a genuinely significant step.
It really is. Showing rejuvenation seems possible in human cells with just small molecules. That's big.
It opens up some incredibly exciting possibilities, but translating it safely to a whole person, that's still a massive challenge, needing a ton more research.
Huge scientific and ethical hurdles remain, absolutely.
So let's shift gears. What if? What if we do crack some of these codes?
Yeah.
If we make major breakthroughs and significantly extend not just how long we live, but how long we live healthfully, keeping people vigorous, productive for decades longer.
Yeah, the health span question.
What does that world look like? The implications go way beyond biology, right? Let's get into those socioeconomic questions your SOA source raises. The Society of Actuaries.
Absolutely. Because the impact would be transformative. First off, the economic value. The sources highlight that the longevity gains we've already seen in the last century have added enormous value. Trillions to national wealth in places like the U.S.
So from people living longer and being productive longer.
Exactly. And even small reductions in mortality from specific diseases like cancer are estimated to be worth hundreds of billions annually, just based on what people are willing to pay for better health.
Okay, so longer healthy lives are economically valuable. But what about the classic fear? Overpopulation.
Right. The planet can't handle it argument.
If everyone lived to 150, won't we be shoulder to shoulder?
Well, the SOA source pushes back on that pretty clearly. Based on demographic principles, it argues overpopulation isn't inevitable at all. Population growth mainly depends on the birth rate compared to the death rate.
Ah, okay. So if birth rates stay low.
Then even dramatic increases in lifespan could lead to surprisingly slow changes in total population. The math shows that. In fact, the source flips the argument. It suggests increased healthy lifespan could actually help countries with very low birth rates.
Help them how?
By preventing sharp population decline, maintaining their workforce, maybe even preserving cultural identity, avoiding what some call a demographic catastrophe.
Interesting counterintuitive point. What about work? If we live healthily for much longer, does that mean we work for much longer?
That's a huge question with lots of potential answers. Longer healthy life could mean longer working lives. One worry raised is that this might delay promotions and opportunities for younger generations. The boxed economy idea.
Creates frustration, maybe pushes younger people towards entrepreneurship?
Could be. Or maybe they find different paths. But the source also points to potential upsides.
Like what?
Longer careers could mean a workforce with way more accumulated experience, potentially higher productivity overall, boosting the economy.
Okay.
Or maybe more likely, the whole structure of how we live our lives could just fundamentally change.
The traditional life stages.
Yeah.
Education, work, retirement. that could break down.
Completely. That's one of the most fascinating possibilities described. Moving away from that rigid three-stage model,
Yeah.
work might become more diffused across a lifespan. Second, third, fourth careers could be the norm.
Lifelong listening becomes essential.
Absolutely. Education wouldn't just be for the young. You'd likely see major periods of retraining, maybe in your 50s, 60s, 70s. Adulthood itself might be less monolithic, maybe broken up by periods for more education or community service or focused family time.
And retirement. Does it disappear?
Maybe it transforms. Less of a full stop, more of a gradual tapering off of work or a shift to different kinds of contribution like volunteering.
Okay, that's a radically different life path. What about families?
Also, potentially huge changes. The source speculates about, well, serial marriages becoming more common, maybe even formalized term contracts.
Whoa, okay, that would shake up finance, legal systems, pensions, inheritance.
Big time. Or maybe traditional marriages just last much, much longer. 60, 70, 80 years becomes normal.
That's a long time.
It is. And you might see more complex family structures, more generations alive at once, mixed extended families.
Could be great for intergenerational connection, or maybe create new tensions.
Both are possible. We just don't know how those dynamics would play out on a mass scale. Other implications they touch on: how we value life itself might change.
How so?
If lives are potentially much longer, more productive, more valuable, maybe actions that harm others are seen as even more serious, stricter consequences.
Interesting ethical dimension.
And then there's the psychological side. Living a longer, more complex life, that could be demanding.
Yeah, sounds exhausting, potentially.
Right. And if your health isn't great or your circumstances are poor, a very long life might not feel like a gift. It could increase discontent, anxiety, even hopelessness for some.
So it's not automatically a utopia.
Definitely not. The source really hammers home the need for society to adapt proactively. Policy changes, becoming a true society for all ages that supports people across this vastly extended potential lifespan.
So pulling it all together from this section, if we achieve significant healthy longevity, it's not just biology changing.
No, it's a catalyst for fundamental societal transformation, touching everything.
Economics, work, education, family structures, our sense of purpose, how we manage potentially 100+ years of active life.
Exactly. We're already seeing some shifts because average lifespans have increased, but cracking healthy maximum lifespan, that would accelerate everything dramatically.
Okay, so let's recap this whole deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground.
We certainly have. We've seen incredible scientific progress in understanding aging, and just the sheer range of interventions being explored is amazing. We looked at pharmaceuticals, supplements like rapamycin, NAD boosters, understanding both the initial promise
And the current limits, the safety questions, the lack of solid human proof for many of them right now.
Exactly. The gap between the lab bench and proven human benefit is still huge there.
And then we shifted to the real frontier stuff, cellular rejuvenation research, where these new findings suggest it might actually be possible to reverse cellular age, restore function, using chemical cocktails in human cells.
Yeah, showing that potential without direct genetic alteration is a major step forward.
But it's clearly a long, complex scientific journey, full of breakthroughs, yes, but also necessary setbacks and careful validation.
Absolutely. Whether it's a public figure like Brian Johnson sharing his personal data, warts and all, or a lab discovering a recipe that seems to turn back the clock in a dish, it's all part of that exploration.
And the big picture that emerges from all these sources,
Yeah.
if we do get there, if we achieve genuinely longer, healthier lives,
It reshapes everything, not just our own health, but the very fabric of society. How we structure our lives, work, learn, connect, plan, across timescales we can barely grasp today.
Right. So let's leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on, building on all this. If science could credibly offer you, personally, a significantly longer and healthier life,
Yeah.
we're not just talking adding frail years, but adding real youthful vigor, capacity, maybe decades of it.
Yeah.
How would that possibility, just the possibility, fundamentally change how you live your life today?
That's a deep question.
And what new responsibilities might come with that kind of extended life for you, for society as a whole?
Yeah.
It's a future that's actively being shaped right now by the kind of research we've been discussing. And it's definitely one worth thinking deeply about.
Indeed it is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Keep exploring.